So, should the president hand out some pink slips to his economic team? Leslie Marshall is a syndicated radio talk show host and my guest now. All right, Leslie, so, no one's going to argue the economy's doing great. So why not fire those who are responsible at the top, they're on the president's economic team?
Probably the same reason that Bush didn't fire Rumsfeld until there was a turn in the House and the Senate, and we're less than 70 days from an election, Megyn. I think it's funny, actually. Can you imagine? That's it. That's what I'm going to do. I can see President Barack Obama saying, that's it. Thank you, John. Thank you for the advice. The problem is this is just posturing, and if we didn't have an election in November, I don't think the minority leader would be saying that.
Okay, maybe it is posturing. I mean, political maneuvering so close to the midterms? I don't know, you cynic, Leslie. But let's assume in a crazy world you might be right, and he might be politically motivated to make these statements. That doesn't necessarily mean he's wrong, right? Because Geithner, Summers, they haven't turned around the economy. We had a report at the top of our 1 o'clock hour on housing sales, and the president tried to fix housing sales. He failed. They dropped, existing home sales dropped 27% in July, which is a ridiculous sort of record and the worst in more than a decade. And then I went out to Bloomberg and did some research on the latest numbers, Leslie. They're talking about this loan modification program that President Obama started. Of the 1.31 million loan modifications he started, 48% were canceled by the end of July, and more than half of all the modifications defaulted again within 12 months. GDP not doing well. The unemployment still hovers at 9.5%. We've got, between 14 and 16 million Americans jobless now. And so, people are looking for accountability.
Oh, absolutely. But just like he couldn't stick his finger in the dike and stop the oil spill, he can't just pull jobs out of a pod that a little whale is lost from, or anywhere else for that matter, Megyn. I mean, the reality is it took us over 8 years to get to this point, and it's not going to turn around in 18 months. I'm one of the most impatient people alive, and I have to say we have to stick with this. You just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is being proposed for those who are handling the economy under the president. You need to give the plan time.
But what is the plan?
Talk about the housing market.
What is the plan? Because people are criticizing the president now. There was a report saying that basically it comes out to it costs Americans almost $200,000 for every job saved or created. That's how much it costs us to create or save somebody's job. And that was a very loose standard of what amounted to a created or saved job. And now people are saying, so what is the president's plan? More stimulus? More housing assistance that appears not to have worked?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because one thing I didn't hear also from the minority leader was any kind of plan except don't let the Bush tax cuts expire.
That's what he's focused on.
When Bush entered office, the unemployment rate was less than 4%. When he left office, it was around 8.4%. Now hovers around 10 or more than that in some states like where I am in California. So obviously that didn't create jobs. I'm not hearing an alternative plan from the Republicans. They're supposed to have one at the end of September. And remember that Republicans and Democrats, Megyn, agreed to this bailout. That was supposed to be one of the cure-alls for the economy as well, and that was a bipartisan plan signed into a law by the former president.
Yeah. Now, what about, do you have faith in Geithner? Because a couple of Democrats came out to defend him after Boehner attacked him today, and it was kind of weak. They basically said, now is not the time for a change. But they didn't get behind Geithner and say, he's our man, or Summers for that matter.
I don't consider the answer to our problems one person. And I said it on national radio. He would not have been my choice. But, of course, Megyn, they didn't call and ask me. He would not have been my choice. But he's who we have now, and I don't feel he is solely going to be responsible for when we turn around entirely. And we are already seeing, I know we're seeing signs of that. My credit card company increased my credit limit without my asking. So I know that we are turning around.
Good for you. Okay, well, if that's the litmus test, amen. Leslie Marshall, always a pleasure. Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks, Megyn.
Coming up.